Hi class, we're going to talk about method overloading today in section 4.3 on page 219 in your textbook, not the ebook, but the textbook. So you may want to turn to this section so you can get a better understanding and you could see what I'm talking about for this session. Now, in method overloading, let's say, for example, you are going to create a student class and you have your instance data and you're about to create your constructor. You would name the constructor public student and then have maybe one parameter which takes a string value, and we could say it's called student name. Now, sometimes what we need to do, we want to keep a constructor that takes one parameter, but you can also create another constructor that maybe takes two parameters, such as student string name and string address. So sometimes when we want certain bits of data, we can create more than one constructor, and this is known as method overloading. So when you go in your driver class and you want to create a student object that only displays names, you would use that first constructor known as public student and then the parameter string name. But if we wanted to get the name and address of that student, we would use the other constructor, public student, and then which takes two parameters, and it could be named string name, comma, string address. So the purpose of method overloading allows you to use a method with the same name, but the difference is it takes various parameters. So it could take one parameter, two parameters, three parameters, and so on. And you can do this throughout your program. So it states here in the second paragraph, often the method name is enough to indicate which method is being called by a specific invocation. And remember, this means that we're calling on a particular method. But in Java, as in other object-oriented languages, you can use the same method name with different parameter lists for several methods. This is called method overloading. It is useful when you need to perform similar operations on different types of data. So my point is, you can create multiple methods or multiple constructors, but the parameter list is different, and that's what this section talks about. So you need to make sure you also read the rest of the information in the textbook. Now let's take a look at an example of method overloading in listing 4.7 on page 222. But let me read this section right here. Method overloading is having to call upon or invoke a method with different parameters, which I stated before. The best place to use method overloading is the constructor. So let's take a look at this program that's shown on the left. And as you can see here, this is the die class, and it has two parameters. Notice this first parameter, and I'm going to move this up so you can really see it. Public die takes how many parameters? Well, if it's an empty parentheses, it takes no parameters. So we just want a die object that takes no parameters. And these are the instance data, where it's going to show the number of faces within a die, that's 6, and the face value, which is 1, saying we want to show that one face on the particular die if you roll the die. Now, notice the second constructor, which is known as method overloading, because how many parameters are in this particular constructor? Well, as you can see, it's one parameter which takes an integer value. So public die int faces. So if you wanted to create a die object that takes an integer value, you would use this constructor. Now it has an if-else statement. Now the key thing you need to start knowing, you can use conditional statements within your constructor or even your method body. So it says here, if faces is less than min faces, then the face will equal 6, else num faces equal faces. So just stating that there's 6 faces to a die, and depending on which face shows up to display that face. And then the face value will equal 1. So it tells you here in the comments, and make sure you read that, explicitly sets the size of the die, defaults to a size of 6 if the parameter is invalid. Initial label value, face value is 1. So it explains how the if-else statement works, letting you know you could start using conditional statements within, again, your constructor or method body. Okay, so another key thing that you need to know is just remember when you do method overloading that you can use constructors as good candidates for overloading. And then I showed you a listing with the die objects that talks about it. And then they have a program in the book called Snake Eyes that will help you out. Okay, so keep in mind that you really need to read the section on method overloading. And if you have any questions, again, please feel free to email me, drjonestech@gmail.com. Have a great day.